Awesome. Thanks for having me. So for this section, just wanted to talk about some of the use cases that we're currently implementing on the Microsoft side. Or a prioritized partner, which basically means that we help, any size customer, enterprise to small businesses, take advantage of the Microsoft technologies. Funding buckets. So Microsoft, of course, has incentives, and we qualify for all of that. So some other time, if that could range anywhere from $5,000 to $1 million in funding from Microsoft, and we can obviously help secure that depending on your situation. So currently we have active OpenAI projects, a lot of them. I picked a few to just talk about some use cases and to talk about sort of how we build the business case for implementing these projects. And we'll get started. So real quick, my name's Kyle. I'm a chief value engineer. Basically, my job is to understand technology and understand finance and how businesses create value. That's a weird role, but unfortunately, we don't see a lot of it. So that's really bridging the gap between IT and the technical and the business case. So with OpenAI, there's a lot of use cases, and we have to really focus on what's going to drive impact. And a lot of times, it's not the initial thought or the initial POC that was requested. So typically we talk to CFOs, we have to justify these projects, and that's kind of where we specialize. And of course, the implementation of those projects. And then Matthew is one of our lead data scientists who works on a lot of our OpenAI projects. So talk about landing zone real quick. Beyond just creating an OpenAI instance, there's usually a lot more involved to make it a production-worthy environment. And then a quick use cases and a quick demo that's a little bit out of the ordinary, which will be a hardware piece, which is basically a super Alexa. So there are some clients that just don't have, it's not practical for them to type or deal with a piece of software. They may be under a car, they may be operating at the operating room table. So they don't have access to their hands. So using OpenAI in a hardware-based interface is quite cool. Obviously, Microsoft doesn't sell those, so we have to create them our own way, but we use the service on the back end. So for really justifying these projects, we get a lot of companies that say, hey, look, a lot of cool stuff. They have the context of the individual user. So these are micro sort of, hey, save me time doing X, Y, Z, but how can we create a macro business case? And how does this affect the financials? And how do we prove this out so we can justify the cost? Something that FP&A understands, CFOs understands, and we get the money to implement these things. So typically what we'll do on the assessments is we start with the financials, which is a little bit different. Most IT folks may freak out about this, but that's kind of where we start. So we really look at, here are the OpenAI opportunities. What can we typically do and what's going to make the biggest impact? And again, a lot of times it's not what companies initially come to us for. We end up using AI technologies, but we may not do it in the areas of the business that they thought would be most beneficial originally. So we'll organize, we'll look at the P&Ls, GL scans, whatever we do that's automated. And we see this all the time. So we'll pick out use cases and try to find, what's the business goal? Some businesses looking to be acquired, some of them are nonprofits. So some of their goals and their profiling is a little bit different. So we take that into consideration and then ultimately create a candidate list. So this would be the candidate list approach, capitalizing actions, which are, what can we do in the AI space to either increase business value? Because ultimately, at the end of the day, if you work for a profit organization, the ultimate goal of board members and the investors is to increase the value of the business. And this is just a tool to do it. And that's what we're looking for. So whether they're pricing studies, whether they're helping with their testing, A/B marketing, whatever, where can we insert OpenAI to get the biggest financial impact? And of course, nonprofits, sometimes a little bit different on the goals there. So we create a capitalizing action list, which is all of what we feel would be the most beneficial. And of course, we would go and implement those and then assess, did it really work? Did we get the ROI that we anticipated over 6 months, 12 months, whatever the case may be? And we're one of the few consulting firms that do value-based billing, which means I hate time and materials, I hate hourly rates. I just want a percentage of the value. So if we go and you increase valuations by 10 million, 100 million, whatever that is, if we increase revenue, yearly revenue by 20 million, reduce cost by 10, we just ask for a percentage of that. And that's the only, we're a little bit different. And that's how we prefer to operate. And that makes sure that we're lightning focused on getting the results. That's the general process that we go through. I know IT folks, which is probably the majority of the attendees, don't dabble in the FP&A space too often. So this is where we kind of bridge the gap. We get the IT projects greenlit for you guys. We do that work, the FP&A work for you to do the ROI justification. So CFOs and leaders are happy to sign off and move forward. Don't memorize this slide, but this is a typical landing zone for an OpenAI project. What I would just want to say is it's a little bit more involved than just provisioning OpenAI. So there's a lot of other considerations with this, connecting VNets, making sure it's secure, integration with Active Directory. So this is just a pattern that we'll typically see with subscriptions, management subscriptions, connectivity subscriptions, and you have AI service subscriptions, and every company is slightly different. But this is a typical pattern that we'll see. And it's a lot more involved, and to get these things to production, a lot more considerations than clicking on a service and saying, hey, it's ready to go. So definitely helping companies get to that level and making sure that it's secure and compliant for their organization. Proof of concept process will typically start here. So this is usually funded by Microsoft in a lot of cases, or partially funded, which we can go get. But requirements gathering, parsing, and development of, usually it's their own custom data. In almost all cases, the client's going to want to use their own data. And then our iterations to improve on the output. I grabbed a few. There's a very large global nonprofit. So just an example of, originally they came to us and said, look, we have a website, typical use case. Can you make a chat? Can you make the search better? And we said, that's fine. Like, let's talk to your leaders and let's see what there's, where the pain points are. And really the pain points for a lot of nonprofits and really anybody is, hey, look, let's get revenue up. So we looked at the P&Ls and we noticed that there is a pretty big portion of revenue that comes from legacy gifts. So this would be folks that leave a partial, pieces of their estate when they pass, which they refer to as legacy gifts. There was a lot of overhead and just getting that legal, and it's different in every state. So you have a lot of, and this really applies to the legal space in general, which has a huge opportunity with OpenAI. But for legacy gifts, we're really to automate making this process seamless. So somebody can literally just upload, or their counsel can upload their current will, depending on what state they're in, and the system will make the adjustments legally for that particular state. And it's really painless. It's almost self-serving or self-service enabled, and really allows them to, get more revenue based on legacy gifts, which we felt was the biggest return given the risk and the effort. So big lift there. And compliance and risk mitigation, we see this as well, where we can feed in things like bylaws, we can feed in regulatory documentation, HIPAA, things like this. And as a first line of defense, again, OpenAI is non-deterministic. The results may not be the same every time, but as a first line of defense, it can understand semantically when rules are violated fairly well if trained correctly. So for instance, if you're sending emails as a level of communication, we can scan all emails and see if any of them violate HIPAA compliance. So the OpenAI, the large language models can make suggestions and even respond back to the user saying, hey, I'm not going to send this email in its current state. You may want to consider changing this. So these active interceptions on the communication channel are effective after they have been scanned. So for compliance and risk reduction, we can create large language models that have been fine-tuned and trained for the compliance portfolio that you're under. So it could be HIPAA, it could be all these regulatory agencies, and it's quite obviously annoying, and it does help as a first line of defense. So things like, one company had leaders that their bylaws said they couldn't be on the plane at the same time, and they forgot about it, right? So it scanned emails and noticed, hey, look, they're going to be on a plane on a trip at the same time, and that's in violation of the bylaws just because of the majority shareholder that they both have. So they can't be on a plane at the same time. So it detected things like that. That again, most people don't memorize bylaws, and it's super annoying. But this really helps kind of as a first line of defense, a notification of things that aren't in compliance or potentially not in compliance. So risk mitigation compliance is another big use case that we see quite often. And this moves into a lot of other legal things. So we've helped firms do all kinds of stuff, write orders, write legal documents, given the propensity for a judge or certain jury types to rule a certain way. So there's a huge potential in that market as well. Again, there's more than this, but just in the interest of time, another client of ours was a global media company. And this one really wanted a typical use case with help our clients get a certain tone. So we want them to help self-help. We want them to be able to chat, and we want the tone, and we want it to adhere to our organizational rules, be highly secure, have a large corpus to learn from, whether that's video, textual, all that has been processed. So most of the OpenAI projects are not just OpenAI. They usually involved other cognitive services out of the box or custom processing to really get the value that you need. And variations of internal, external. So a lot of these chat bots, you'll have internal, external facing. We may have to segment the indexes. So when we index different materials for security reasons, if there's highly sensitive documents, obviously we would index those separately. So there's different strategies to segment security-wise. We can also create wrapper APIs to do some of that work as well if needed. Just for the demo, we'll have Matthew do this. And some of our clients don't have the ability to type, or they don't have the ability to, their hands are busy. They're under a car, they're fixing something. You know, a lot of times, you know, executives just want to ask questions, or on the golf course, you know, what's my return on working capital for Q3? Boom, get the answer. So the hardware piece is actually quite enticing to some organizations and some workers, again, that don't have hands-free and they're not at a computer all the time. So here we would create, you know, we use Raspberry Pi. There's nothing super special about it, but it's integrated into a way that they can just simply ask questions of basically a super Alexa. And it's backed by all the OpenAI services, which is kind of cool. So this is basically the Alexa that everybody truly wants, and it's nice. So I'll have Matthew go ahead and take over for the demo for that one.
Hi, yeah, my name is Matthew Honecker, and here is kind of what it looks like. I have a little USB speaker, and this is just a Raspberry Pi, so, you know, kind of a development version. And basically it takes in spoken words, speech, and then translates it for the OpenAI, and then we get an answer back. So I will start the service here and ask it a couple of questions. We have a few different documents loaded in that cover just a kind of a random assemblage of topics, so we can ask a few different questions. One of those is a set of bylaws. For how long may a board member serve?
According to the sample nonprofit bylaws, all appointments to the board shall be for 3-year terms. No person shall serve more than 2 consecutive terms unless a majority of the board at a board meeting at which a quorum is present votes to appoint a board member to 1 additional year. No person shall serve more than 7 consecutive years. After serving a total of 2 terms or 2 terms and 1 year, as the case may be, a board member may be eligible for reconsideration as a board member after 2 years have passed since the conclusion of such board member's service.
Stop. And so that's just one example using a set of bylaws. We can also ask it questions over like donors or general knowledge questions. You can set up an internet search service also. Who was the largest donor in 2022?
The largest donor in 2022 is not mentioned in the provided sources.
Who was the largest donor in 2022? Oh. And so you can see here that sometimes the non-deterministic nature will give you a poor response. And then we also have some medical data. How do I treat tension pneumothorax?
Beta refers to a software or feature that is still in the testing phase and has not yet been fully released to the public. It may have limited functionality or be subject to changes based on user feedback. In the context of the sources provided, there are several references to new beta APIs and a new Azure spending beta page that are currently being tested and improved by Microsoft.
So I started speaking too soon in that case, and so it thought I only said beta. We'll try one more time. How do I treat tension pneumothorax? Oh, no match. So that's the basic demo of the OpenAI, sort of speaker service. And then you can also, of course, use text for all of these kinds of questions. So I'll turn it back over to Kyle.
Awesome. Thanks, Matthew. Again, these are just situations where, we do have executives that just like having these super Alexa speakers. Instead of looking at Power BI reports, they just simply ask simple questions, or it doesn't have to be simple. But if we feed the data in correctly, they can get what they want by just asking questions. So we can put these in boardrooms, we can put these speakers, in executive offices, and take advantage of the back-end power of OpenAI. We also fit it into other analytical processes. So if I look at hypothesis-driven processes, this would be what we refer to as multivariate regression or multivariate analysis. It helps really accelerate those projects. So if I looked at like marketing, if I just took a use case and the question was, what language, let's say it's donor or marketing emails that I'm sending out. And it's really about, hey, look, I can create a whole bunch of variations of an email very quickly and test those variations. So in the past, humans would manually create them. Now I can guide OpenAI to do a lot of different variable creations, whether they're email variations, personalizations of emails and things like that. But as far as testing and getting the results, it allows that process to accelerate. So a lot of times we'll use OpenAI as steps to larger hypothesis type testing situations. And a lot of times we do this with marketing. So whether it's A/B testing or multivariate testing, it could be variants on all different kinds of versions of websites. Of course, there's tools to help do that. But OpenAI plays a very big piece in creating the content or the variations quickly to do the test. So humans don't have to do it. So it does accelerate that process. Yeah, so in the interest of time, I'll leave it open to questions if anybody has any, but that is it for my presentation.